every Airbnb data set that I have on Canvas will look similar to this. There'll be lots of different columns in here. So I mentioned that I'm kind of interested in the neighborhood cleanse. So this is what they do is they clean it up, and you can see that Montreal is kind of messy. It has all these like French characters in here and stuff. So this is Montreal. This is a different version of Montreal, and you can kind of see that the state is a little messy. So when you're working on your area that you picked, I would focus on this neighborhood cleanse. I would not use the city or the state. You might be interested in the property type or the room type. So these are columns that might be interesting for you because like what if an area like doesn't have a lot of like entire homes and it's mostly like private rooms or stuff like that. But for the Montreal data set, I'm not gonna focus on that one, but I am interested in this accommodates. So this is going to help me get a sense for how many people can stay in these listings, and I'm going to use this to kind of identify does the area of interest have the majority of their listings accommodates 3 or more. So 3 or more is kind of thinking like, okay, a couple would be like 2 people, right? And then there might be a third person in there or more. So that's a bigger party. So I want to make sure that we have majority of our listings can accommodate that party size. Here are the different price columns. So I'm going to just highlight this price. This is the nightly price. You notice how like some of the weeklies and the monthlies are blank. So that would mean that those properties listings don't have those rates. And that's really all I'm going to be using. Where's my number of reviews? Never mind. So I'm also going to be using the number of reviews. So just kind of highlighting those in yellow. But what I'm going to do here is we're going to do most of this in pivot tables in Excel. So if I go back to my slides, 3 out of the 4 here, I'm going to do in pivot tables and pivot charts. And then this last one, we're going to do kind of a little bit of a custom chart in Excel, just so I can kind of like, I don't want to see like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 combinations in my chart. I kind of want to group that up. So we're going to do a little custom there. So if you have never used pivot tables before in Excel, they're really useful to do analysis, and it's really easy to create one as well. So just make sure that you have any point of your data, like just put your mouse anywhere on here and go to the insert ribbon on the top toolbar. And we're just going to click insert pivot table from table or range. This is a range of data in Excel. So I'm going to go and click insert. The reason why it's important that you actually click on your data is because then Excel will like recognize the range that has data. So in this Montreal, Canada data set, there's like 21,104 rows here. So Excel does a decent job at detecting the range here. And so I almost always put my pivot table on a new worksheet here. I would not mess around with this existing worksheet because you might run into errors if it doesn't have any room for the pivot table where you're saying to do it. So we're just going to click OK there, and we'll get a sheet 3 here. Those names are not that useful, but you can rename them if you would like. And you essentially just get a blank pivot table, and you're kind of ready to go. So the first question is chart for the number of listings by neighborhood. Real simple one, not too complicated. And so I'm going to add a field to my pivot table that's going to count up the number of listings. I'm going to go, you could use essentially any one of these fields, but I'm going to use the ID field. So I'm going to click on ID and I'm going to drag it down to the values here. And the most important thing you got to watch out for with pivot tables is by default, it's going to use a sum. And so the sum of the ID is just like a numerical, it's probably some sort of Airbnb unique identifier for that property. The sum of that number is absolutely nonsensical and not useful. So you want to make sure that you change that to count. I want to count up the number of listings. So I'm going to go ahead and do a left click on my mouse here, and I'm going to select value field settings, and I'm going to change this to a count. So that confirms what I had said a moment ago, that we have 21,104 listings in the entire data set. And I want to do it by neighborhood. So I'm going to use that cleansed neighborhood. I'm going to drag that to the rows, and I get a nice little summary. It's going to be in alphabetical order by default. I want to sort that. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and create the chart right away. I recall from the discussion board, some of you had a chart that kind of might have looked similar to something like this. And so when you have a chart like this, it's not very useful for your audience because, do we really need to see all these little neighborhoods with barely any listings? Now, I mentioned that I was going to just filter those out, and I said I only want to focus on any neighborhood that has at least 100 listings. So let's go ahead and do that one first. So the way I could filter this pivot table to get rid of like all these ones that are really low, like 5, 17, etc., is you're going to do a right click or a secondary click, depending if you're on a Mac. Do a secondary click on, you're going to do it on the neighborhood field. You don't do that on the numbers here. So you're going to right click on the neighborhood cleanse, and I'm going to say filter, and I'm going to do a value filters. So I'm going to select this last one here, and we're just going to say, we're going to filter based on this values. Count of ID is greater than 100. So I'm just going to type in 100 here and click OK. And then that already kind of cleans it up. But to make it look even better, I would like this to be sorted. So it's much easier for me to see, what are the top ones. So in order to do that, that is where you're going to click on the numbers. And we're going to right click on the numbers here. And I'm going to say sort largest to smallest. And that sorts the chart. So we can immediately see here that La Poteau, Montreal is the neighborhood with the most listings in the Montreal area, followed very closely by Ville Marie. So these two stand out from the rest, but let's clean this up too. So make sure that the pivot chart is selected. And I personally don't like these things. I think these things are ugly. So if you go to your pivot chart, analyze, click it, and then you could just turn off, hide all field buttons. Those are there because if you wanted to actually make your chart interactive and be able to be filtered from the chart versus from the pivot table, that's what you would use those field buttons for. But I don't think that is particularly useful, especially if you're going to be putting it into a presentation. And then this is important. You will be marked down slightly if you don't clean up your charts. So all of your charts, the main elements that all charts should have are one, it should have titles for each axis, and then it should have a chart title. So the chart title, as well as the axes titles. The legend is not always needed. So in this particular case, we only have the one series, which is the count of ID or the number of listings. So this blue legend here is not useful. So just get rid of it. Just uncheck legend here and get rid of that. So that's it. So let's go ahead and start typing in here. So this is going to be neighborhood, and it is the British version of neighborhood. You can make these a little bit bigger too if you would like. So like if I say like, let's say 16, and then this will be the number of listings. If you don't like this horizontal thing, what makes people tilt, you could go to the formatting pane, and then you could say horizontal. So I think that looks a little cleaner and easier to read. And so then we'll just say number of Airbnb listings in Montreal by neighborhood. And then that's pretty much it for here. We could, if we wanted to, we could add some data labels. So click on the plus and just say data labels, just so we can see these numbers. So without doing anything else, I think the two that are kind of standing out to me are these two right here, particularly. They stand out from the crowd. So that's really it for that first one. I'm going to go ahead and make this smaller for a little bit because I want to keep it on the, I'm going to make it bigger when we put it on the PowerPoint, but we're going to make it a little bit smaller here just so I could kind of work on the same page. So let's go back here. So now we're going to do, the number of listings is great and that's useful, but as I mentioned, the number of reviews could indicate how highly trafficked it is. So maybe some of these are not particularly busy, which means that maybe a lot of people are not going there. So let's go ahead and do another one. You can copy and paste pivot tables. So if I just highlight this pivot table right here, I'm going to go ahead and paste it down here right below. Make sure you clear the filters though, if you do copy and paste the pivot table, just so you can make sure we're working with a clean pivot table that has all of the data. And we're going to go ahead and insert another pivot chart. And this one, I'm going to stick, we're going to be doing lots of bar charts. I am going to be doing a pie for question 4, but I think for this particular views, I think bar charts is going to be the way to go here. And for this one, I'm going to show you how to do, instead of 100 or more, what we're going to do is we're going to filter this one by the, but before I do that, did I hide the fields? Where's my fields? So if I click on here, right click, all right, what happened to it? Oh, the thing was in the way here. So this particular question was the number of reviews. So make sure you change the values. Let's drag that one out of there. And let's find our number of reviews. And we're going to drag that to here. And we got that. And then I'm going to go ahead and sort it descending. For this particular field, I probably could have done it on this one, but this one does get a little bit bigger in numbers. So I'm going to show you how to format that. So I can click a regular click on this field in the values and say value field settings. And then I can say number format. And what I'm going to do is what I want is no decimals, but I want to have a comma separator, just so it's a little bit easier to see these really bigger numbers. Instead of doing 100 or more here, we could filter out on the neighborhoods that are in this list. But for the purposes of today, I'm just going to show you that how to do a top 10 filter or a top 5 filter or whatever you want to do. So let's filter this one for the top 10 neighborhoods with the most reviews. So you're going to do a right click on the neighborhood cleanse, and you're going to say filter top 10, and then you could change this from 10 to 5 or whatever you want. It's totally your call. But I'm going to leave it as 10 by the number of reviews, and I'm just going to click OK. And then I get my top 10. So now we just have to do some cleanup here. So I'll get rid of all those field buttons. We're going to add in the axes titles. I'm going to get rid of the legend. And then this is going to be neighborhood as well. I think I did 16. Make it bigger. And then we'll say this is number of reviews. Let's go ahead and rotate that one. I'll have to see how that looks on the PowerPoint. This is a little bit longer. So doing that horizontally I don't think it looks as good. We'll come back to that. So we'll say total reviews by neighborhood. Okay. Let's go ahead and now what I'm going to do here is we got these pretty much ready to go here. I'm going to go ahead and click on this chart. So I'm going to copy it, Control C or Command C if you're on Mac. We're going to come back to our PowerPoint here, and I'm going to, let's go ahead and move this over here off the page here. Now, I don't see my paste. Hold on. And I'm just going to do a regular paste. You want to make sure that you make it a chart object. That way, if I want to resize these so that they fit on this page, they will automatically adjust in their sizing. If you do a picture and then you try to if it's like more like a rectangle and you try to make it more vertical, it's going to look awful. So do not use pictures when you're pasting into PowerPoint. And you can, I can actually rotate this on the PowerPoint. So I could put this back to that rotation. But if I go back to my Excel, you see it's the same way. It didn't, so it only changed the chart object in PowerPoint. So I'm going to do Control V to paste this one here. And then we're going to kind of just arrange this a little bit to look good. Format title. And we're gonna make them, I'm going to put them back to that rotation. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back to this one. This one, maybe what we do we need it in Montreal? I don't think we do. So let's make that without that. So let's come back to the chart title. So in addition to having your visuals on your page, you want to have at least one sentence in your headline that tells your audience what we see here. So now that I have these on here, what stands out to me so far is we did have the Montreal is the most listings, followed by Ville Marie, but then they swap when we get the total reviews. And so Ville Marie is all the way up to 160,000 for this time period, has the most reviews. So I'm really honing in on Ville Marie at this point for my business, but we need to investigate further before we make that decision. But that's kind of my tentative lead here. And I forgot to put the labels on this one. So let's go ahead and add the labels to this chart. So we'll come back to that, but that's probably what our headline would say is, focusing on these two with Ville Marie being a focus. So I'm going to go ahead and click here and say new slide. You can see all the slides that are coming up for future classes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and now we're going to do the chart number 3. So I mentioned on my methodology that I was interested in about $150 a night. I don't want to, open my business in some, high-end place that people are not going to potentially travel for my particular business. So let's go ahead and do another bar chart. So let's go ahead and copy this pivot table. I'm going to go ahead and put it over here. Make it bigger. Let's go ahead and clear the filters and then get rid of this format shape. Let's go ahead and drag the count ID off there and let's find our daily price. Put our price down here, but I don't want to add up the prices for all the listings. I want to do the average price. So all the areas in the different neighborhoods in Montreal, what's the average price? So you just do a regular left click on your mouse to go to the value field settings, and we can change that to average. That's going to get like a floating point decimal here. So we're going to go ahead and click it again and go to value field settings and go to number format. And for this particular one, since we are dealing with money, I'm going to use the currency, but make sure that whatever data set, or I'm sorry, whatever area you picked for your business, just be aware of the local currency. So don't format it as dollars, USD dollars, if it's not dollars for wherever you're at. So just be aware of that. I'm going to go ahead and do 2 decimals, and I'm going to have the dollar symbol on it because this is Canada. Then we're going to do the similar thing. We're going to sort it, largest to smallest. But what stands out here now, and so statistics can be misleading, right? So this, and I'm not even going to attempt to say it, this area, the average price is $562 a night. But that area, that neighborhood is not even in my top here. I'm not seeing it. So not a lot of Airbnbs in that area, but for the ones that are there, it's quite expensive. So what we're going to do here on this particular one, they're in Excel. There are more advanced ways of doing it, but for here, we're just going to keep it simple. And I'm going to go to just go to this thing, and what we're gonna do is I'm just gonna basically manually pick the ones that were over here. So we know we have the Mont Royal, we know that Ville Marie was there, then Rosemont, whatever that is, that one. So I'm just looking at the chart to the left here. That's why I wanted to have it on the same page so it's easy to see. Verdun. So I'm filtering this one for the ones that have 100 or more. And if I was doing it this work, I certainly would not do it manually like this, but we'll just keep it simple for y'all. And then Lachine and Westmount. Okay, cool. So I got that, and now I have this is the neighborhoods that have at least 100 listings. What is their average? You can see that the prices come way down. So those really expensive ones, there's not a lot of them in that particular area. We'll go ahead and create another bar chart. So we're just in bar chart land here. And that's it here. But what I'm going to do here, let's go to pivot table. Let's hide our field buttons. Let's get rid of our two axis titles, get rid of our legend, and then add our labels. I'm going to put this down here to make it a little bit bigger. But what I see now here is, okay, so Westmount is the highest average price, but that only has 115 listings. Ville Marie was the second highest number of listings, the most number of reviews, and the average price is $142. And so that was right in my price range that I was interested in. And so later, we're going to do some inferential statistics on this $142. So we're going to do some confidence intervals and hypothesis tests about this $142. So we're going to do, this is a sample mean, and we're going to make an inference on the population. Can we conclude that Ville Marie is actually less than $150 in the entire population? So I'm going to do one thing here, and I'm going to format that one data point right there, and we're going to make it stand out a little bit, and we're going to use orange for that one. Let's do our titles. So this is going to be neighborhood. This is going to be price. Make that a little bit bigger like I did before, 16. And then average nightly price for top neighborhoods. Let's just say that. And then we got our chart here. So let's go ahead and copy it, go back to PowerPoint, come here. I'm going to delete that text box because we're not going to have that. And let's make it big because we're going to fill this in with one more chart. I'm probably going to, let's format this. So let's click this and say format data labels, number. And I think we can probably get away with just no decimals on the chart in the presentation. So think about things like that for aesthetics, clean it up. You could also make it even, let me see here. Is that doing it? That's not doing anything. I want to make those a little bit bigger. Yeah. I'm just making the gap width a little bit bigger just to kind of make these stand out a little bit. So I highlighted Ville Marie because that's the one that we're going to focus on for the last part here. So the last one is, so I've picked Ville Marie. That's where we're going to open our business. But now I want to say, okay, within Ville Marie, what types of listings do they have? Do they accommodate a lot of people? And so that's why we're going to show that should be, I don't know why it says chart for the proportion of listings by the number of accommodations for the target neighborhood. And so we're going to go back and we're going to wrap this one up and we're going to do another chart. But now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create another pivot table. So you can see how we're using pivot tables a lot here. Let's go ahead and put it over here. I'll just make that smaller for now because we already have it in the PowerPoint. Let's go ahead and format shape. And now I'm going to move this. Let's clear the filter first. So we'll get all of the neighborhoods back. But I'm going to move the neighborhood up to the filters now. And then I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the average price. And I probably should have copied the count one because that's kind of what we needed, but we'll just create a new one. And then a count of ID, and then I'm going to use this accommodates here. So remember I highlighted that accommodates column. So this tells me this property only accommodates 2 people, this 2, 4, 4, 5, etc. So how many Airbnb listings in Ville Marie? So I'm going to come here and I'm going to select just Ville Marie. And so now I could see the breakdown. So there's some big properties in here, but most of them are accommodating like 2 or 4. That's the majority. So we're going to create a pie chart, but we're not going to use pivot charts here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say accommodates. And I'm going to say 1, 2, 3 plus. Number of listings. Let's center that, although it's not going to matter because it's not going to be in the chart. So 1 is 312. 2 is 1976. And then 3 plus is all of that. So that is 3241. So these are the numbers that I want to do in my chart. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight these. This is different than a pivot chart. So you got to go to the insert ribbon. And I'm going to do a pie for this one. And so once you set up your data, it's super listings, super easy to create your chart. So we're going to say number of listings by accommodation in Ville Marie. And maybe do something like that. All right, so let's customize this pie chart a little bit. Let's go ahead and add data labels. So that's just going to match the numbers, but I want to see the relative frequency or the proportion of these numbers. And particularly, I'm interested in this gray pie slice here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these labels, and I'm going to right click or secondary click on a Mac, and I'm going to say format data labels, and I'm going to say add percentage, and I'm going to get rid of the value. One thing you could do is you could say category name as well, and then you can get rid of your legend. So this is 1 is 6%, 2 is 36%, and then every other property in Ville Marie that accommodates 3 or more represents 58%. So another thing that we'll be doing later in class is we'll be doing a hypothesis test on this proportion. So the majority in a population would be considered something greater than 50%. The majority is half, right? So I could do a hypothesis test to can we conclude with a certain level of confidence that the majority of listings in Ville Marie accommodate 3 or more. But now we're just doing our descriptive statistics. So we're ready to go for this chart. We'll go to PowerPoint and we'll do a paste. And we're going to resize this to kind of fit here. And that's really it for the descriptive statistics in the charts. You can see that PowerPoint is pretty cool with the designer on the side. So you could pick something that if you're using PowerPoint or if you're using Google Slides. The one thing I caution you on the Google Slides is Google doesn't do a great job with rendering charts and slides. Like charts like this, I think should be fine. But certain charts, like statistical charts, like histograms and box plots, they don't do well in Google Slides. But you can use whatever slideshow tool you like. I won't play around with the formatting here, but to wrap up the demonstration part, what you would do is you would need to have some sort of one sentence headline here. So we could say, and I gotta kind of like look closely here. So it's le, but so we're talking about these two, and Ville and Marie are the top 2 neighborhoods in Montreal, with Ville Marie leading, or you could say with Ville Marie being the most popular, not popular for visits, something like that. Do your best. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger to fit here. It's probably a little big on the font. Yeah, that looks better. It doesn't like the British neighborhoods. So what you could do is you could say ignore all. And I really don't like it's kind of doing that on that too. I think if I go to slideshow format though, it's not gonna, yeah. Doesn't do that, the little squiggly for the spelling when you're in slideshow. And then we'll go ahead and let's just delete that and just come here just to keep it with the same format. And we'll copy that and we'll say Ville Marie is under our target demographic of $150 per night and has 58% of Airbnb locations that accommodate more than 3 or more. Three or more people. So that's it. We can probably clean that up, but that's what I'll do for live here.